Hey parents, this is Mr. Hall. I'm going to talk real quick about rounding decimals. One of the first things that we need to know if we're rounding decimals is all the place values. Now we've noticed we've got all these different names, but they all have a certain spot they're supposed to be. For example, the ones is the first spot to the left of the decimal. And we have our tens, our hundreds, and then we have a pattern. It actually goes on to our thousands, 10,000s, and then 100. So it always goes the new unit, so ones, then tens, hundreds, thousands, new unit, tens, hundreds. And then millions would be next. Now I've got all these red ones with the THS. Now this is what I like to call everything behind the decimal. I call them the splash zone. The reason is because with that THS at the end, it gives it a real sound and makes you spray. So the 10 goes there, the 100 go there, and the 1,000 go there, all in the splash zone. Now that we know all this, we can look at the two next steps. Step number 1, wow, that's weird, is to look at the number behind the number that we're rounding. If we're rounding the number 1.89, and if we're rounding the 8, we need to look at step 1, look at the number behind the number we're rounding. So if we're rounding the 8, that's the number we're going to round, we need to first look at the number behind it. The number behind is a 9, and this is where step number 2 comes in. So if we first find the number we're rounding, and then we look at the number behind, and then here's a nice little rhyme that will help you know how to do this. Step 2, if it's 5 or above, give it a shove. If it's 4 or below, keep it down low. Now what that means is we look at the number behind it. If that number is 5 or above, we're going to give this number in that we're focusing on a shove, and it's going to go up. So 9 is 5 or above, so this 8 is going to get a shove, and it's going to become a 9. Then we get rid of everything behind it, which gives us 1.9. And here's a similar problem, except this time we're going to round the 8, and I changed the number behind it. So step 1, we look at the number we're going to round, and then we look at the number behind it. Then we go to step number 2. If it's 5 or above, give it a shove. That's what we did last time. But if it's 4 or below, we're going to keep it down low. So since it's 4 or below, this 8 is going to stay an 8. We're going to keep it low, and the same thing, we'll get rid of the numbers behind it, and we have 1.8. So it doesn't matter what type of number you get and where the numbers lie, the rules are the same. So for example, if someone tells me to round the number in the tenths spot, I follow the same rules. My step number 1, I look at that number, and then I look at the number behind it to decide if I round it. Then step number 2, if it's 5 or above, give that 4 a shove. If it's 4 or below, keep it down low. We do have a 5, which makes it go higher. We're going to give it a shove, and then that 4 gets a shove up to become a 5. Everything in front of that stays the same. I know this doesn't look great, but you get the idea. And everything behind, you don't have to worry about, or you could draw a 0. It doesn't really make a difference. Okay? So that's how the rounding works.